Vox seal engaged. Data sanctified. Across the galaxy, there are worlds where industry never sleeps. Mountains are stripped to feed the forges, and rivers of molten metal flow like veins beneath the surface. Their skies are blackened with exhaust, their continents hollowed by machinery older than most civilizations. These are the Forgeworlds, the great engines of imperial power. They build the tools of conquest, the vessels of war, and the relics of faith. Every bolt shell, every starship, every titan begins in the shadow of a forge. To the Adeptus Mechanicus, these worlds are more than factories. They are sacred ground. Industry is not labor here, it is devotion. The act of building is a form of prayer. This transmission will examine their origins, their structure, and their place in the Imperium. Understand the forges, and you understand how the Imperium endures.
The story of the Forgeworlds begins in the shadow of the Age of Strife. The galaxy had fractured. The Emperor had not yet risen. Humanity's once vast empire was reduced to isolated strongholds, cut off by warp storms and civil war. On Mars, a different path took root. What survived there was not faith in a single ruler, but reverence for the machines that still functioned. While Terra starved and burned, Mars endured. Its people organized around the forges, salvaging, rebuilding, preserving every fragment of technology they could keep alive. This devotion became a creed. The Martian priesthood worshipped the machine god, seeing each working device as proof of a higher order. To them, survival was not won through conquest, but through preservation. From Mars, they launched expeditions to other worlds, not to rule, but to build. These colonies were chosen for their resources, their stability, and their potential to sustain heavy industry. There, they replicated their faith and their forges, planting the foundations of what would become the Mechanicus's industrial network. Each new forge world was a mirror of Mars, shaped by the same principles. Preserve the past, rebuild the machinery of war, and guard their knowledge from decay. These were not empires of people, they were empires of steel. By the time the Emperor's armies reached Mars during the Great Crusade, the forges were already waiting, silent titans in the dark, ready to power the Imperium's rebirth.
A forge world is not like other planets of the Imperium. From orbit, their surfaces burn with a constant glow. Oceans of molten slag, great rivers of fire, and sprawling city complexes built not for beauty, but for function. They are monuments to endurance, constructed layer upon layer across millennia. As the transports descend through ash-choked clouds, the light of the surface blurs into the glow of forge fires. There are no forests here, no clear skies. The land is carved into manufactoria sectors and refinery zones, each the size of a continent. Chimneys rise like spires, habitats are built inside the skeletons of titanic engines. The air itself is heavy with the breath of machines. On the surface, industry never ceases. Foundries melt ore into ingots. Plasma furnaces power manufactoria lines that run without pause. Rail convoys move weapons to the loading platforms, where orbiting ships wait to bear their cargo to the war fronts of the Imperium. Every movement is scripted, every process sanctified. At the center of each Forge world stands its heart, the Forge Temple. Here, the highest Magi direct production through noospheric command networks, their minds entwined with cogitators. The temple is both cathedral and control hub, where faith and function meet without separation. For the Mechanicus, there is no distinction between the two. Beneath the ruling priesthood, Skitari cohorts patrol the streets, cybernetic soldiers bound to the will of their forge. They guard against intrusion and ensure the sanctity of production. Tech adepts maintain machinery that is older than most imperial worlds. Menials and servitors fill the endless manufactoria floors, their lives spent turning gears and guiding the flow of materials. There is no true night here. The forges burn without pause. Time is measured not by days, but by production cycles. To live on a forge world is to serve the machine, whether through calculation, construction, or simple obedience to the will of the priesthood. Above it all, orbital shipyards and macro docks rise from the atmosphere like iron thrones. From these stations, warships are born, great vessels of the Imperial Navy, night banners, and even titans. To the outside eye, these are factories. To the Mechanicus, they are holy sites. This is the nature of a forge world. Not a planet that hosts industry, but a planet that is industry. Every surface, every tunnel, every orbiting structure is bound to the forge. It is a world that does not sleep. The Forge Worlds are more than industrial centers. They are the foundation upon which the Imperium's armies stand. Every lasgun carried by a guardsman, every shell fired from a tank, every void ship launched from a naval dockyard relies on their output. The Imperium spans 1,000,000 worlds, but only a fraction of them are capable of manufacturing at scale. The Forge Worlds fill this gap. They produce weapons, armor, munitions, vehicles, and starships, not as individual crafts, but as an unending tide. Through the Treaty of Mars, these planets answered not to the High Lords of Terra, but to the Mechanicus. Their obedience belongs to the Forge, their allegiance to the Machine God. The Imperium tolerates this independence because it has no alternative. Without the Forge Worlds, the wars of mankind would simply stop. Every major military campaign depends on their cooperation. A crusade without a forged supply line is a crusade already lost. When a world is cut off from Mechanicus support, even the most disciplined forces run dry. Their shipyards are particularly vital. From these orbital docks come the cruisers of the Imperial Navy, the transports of the Astra Militarum, and the war engines of the Titan legions. It is the Forge that keeps the Imperium moving. Yet their role extends beyond logistics. The Forge Worlds hold political weight. When Mars speaks, even Terra must listen. For in this age, faith alone does not win wars. Steel does. Though united under the sigil of the Mechanicus, no two Forge Worlds are alike. Each developed in isolation before being drawn into the wider Imperium. Their purpose is shared, but their methods, culture, and specialties are their own. Mars remains the heart of this network. It is the birthplace of the Mechanicus, home to the Fabricator General, and the spiritual center of the Machine God's faith. It is from Mars that standardized patterns of technology flow, and to Mars that all Forge Worlds ultimately differ. Beyond Mars lie countless others. Ryza, famed for its plasma technology, arms Imperial forces with weapons few others can replicate.
Lucius is known for its vast Titan forges and disciplined adherence to ancient design. Metallica, efficient and unyielding, is a symbol of relentless output. Each of these worlds reflects the character of its priesthood as much as the machines they build. Some Forge Worlds specialize in void ship production, others in armor or engines of war. Their specialization is not a mark of rivalry, but a reflection of how the Mechanicus spreads its capability across the Imperium. If one forge is lost, another can sustain the flow of arms, at least for a time. Not all Forge Worlds are giants. Many exist as smaller, fiercely loyal satellites feeding resources into greater hubs. Others are so old that their origins have been lost to sealed archives and half-forgotten canticles. Whether vast or obscure, each one is a cog in a network that keeps the Imperium alive. Together, they form a kind of constellation, distant from one another but bound by the same purpose. Through them, the faith of the machine god becomes material reality.
Forge Worlds are the Imperium's lifeline, and for that reason, they are never safe. Their dangers are military, political, and doctrinal, each capable of halting production as surely as bombardment. Begin with the obvious: assault from without. Orc warlords prize the forges for their engines and guns. Tyrannid swarms strip a world of biomass and leave the machinery rusting in dead air. Eldar raiders cut supply lanes with precision strikes. The most insidious attacks, however, do not fall from orbit. They arrive as code. Scrap code, corrupted instruction sets, often linked to chaos, can seize control of Manufactoria, blind orbital docks, and turn servitors against their handlers. Entire sectors have fallen silent after a single contaminated update. The Mechanicus treats such outbreaks like plague: isolate, quarantine, purge. Within, power is not simple. Forge Worlds owe allegiance to Mars, through the Fabricator General, not to Terra's High Lords. That independence is tolerated because the Imperium cannot fight without their output. It also breeds tension. Data tithes and production quotas become leverage. Disputes over access to sacred designs are resolved behind sealed doors, or, when that fails, with Skitarii deployments. Rival doctrines complicate unity. Some forges favor strict adherence to ancient patterns, others push sanctioned rediscovery at the edge of orthodoxy. A standard template construct, an STC fragment, a pre-imperial design archive, can redraw alliances overnight. Whoever controls a viable pattern controls the flow of weapons. Wars have been averted and started over a single recovered blueprint. The line between caution and paranoia is narrow. The Cultus Mechanicus remembers the men of iron, abominable intelligences that turned on their makers long before the Imperium rose. That memory shapes law. True artificial minds are forbidden. Research that skirts that boundary becomes tech heresy, and the punishment is absolute. The greatest internal threat is the Dark Mechanicus, traitor priesthoods who pledged their forges to chaos during the heresy and after. They build engines without limiters, bind demons into circuits, and seed scrap code where piety once stood. A loyal Forge World facing a Dark Mechanicus incursion does not merely risk defeat, it risks inversion. The same assembly lines turned to manufacture its destruction. Even loyal forges are not immune to fracture. When shortages bite, ore convoys lost, promethium roots cut, workforce servitors corrupted, entire production trees fail. A single missing reagent halts 1,000 processes downstream. The priesthood calls this cascade silence.
It kills more campaigns than enemy guns. Defense is layered to meet these pressures. Planetary void shields and defense lasers deter orbital strikes. Skitarii cohorts police the works. Titan maniples serve as both deterrent and last line. Above the atmosphere, shipyards anchor fleets and act as choke points for any invasion. Yet the first barrier is always doctrinal. Audit the code, sanctify the process, lock the pattern. Faith here is a security protocol. Finally, there is the quiet struggle over who commands the future. Terra demands victory. Mars demands purity of design. One side measures success in conquered systems, the other in uncorrupted output. When time is short, the Imperium accepts compromises it later condemns. The Forges remember the condemnation longer than the crisis. This is the burden of a Forge world, to feed a war that never ends while defending the means of feeding it. If they hold, the Imperium fights on. If they fail, worlds go dark, not from enemy fire, but from the silence that follows when the line stops moving.
Forge worlds stand at the center of the Imperium's strength. They are not simply factories, nor colonies, nor fortresses. They are the beating engines that hold the war machine together. Their history reaches back to the ruins of the Age of Strife. Their power fuels every campaign fought in the Emperor's name. And their fall, when it comes, is felt across entire sectors. Faith keeps their forges burning. Industry gives that faith its shape. As long as their engines turn, the Imperium endures. Vox seal disengaging. Data archived. Transmission terminated.